Nearshoring comes to Mexico and Eastern Europe. Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff, and this is Plain English. Here at Plain English, we help you upgrade your skills with stories about current events and trending topics. Each episode also helps you express a new idea in English. That's because we show you exactly how to use one English expression. Today's story is about nearshoring. That's the word used to describe companies bringing manufacturing and services closer to home. If the 1990s and 2000s were about globalization, then this decade is about regionalization. Today, we'll talk about how nearshoring is affecting two regions, Mexico and Eastern Europe. In the second half of the episode, I'll show you how to use the English phrasal verb carve out. This is lesson number 654, so that means JR, our producer, has uploaded the full lesson to plainenglish.com/654. Let's get started. For decades, it seemed that trade between countries was going in only one direction, up. Many big companies became international, opening offices, call centers, and factories around the world. Asia became known as the world's workshop. Offshoring is the word used to describe big companies moving manufacturing to countries, mostly in Asia, where labor was cheaper. Supply chains grew ever more complex. Foxconn can assemble up to 500,000 iPhones a day in its massive facility in China. Some car parts cross international borders 8 times before they're finally put in a vehicle. As the 2010s came to a close, though, there were signs that trade among the world's countries and regions was slowing. And then the pandemic changed everything. Shipping costs increased, factories closed, and governments acted unpredictably. Companies realized there were hidden risks in having complex, far-flung supply chains. China's zero COVID policies exposed political risk too. And the geopolitical rivalry between the US and China has added to the risk of running a big international company. Well, now there's a new buzzword in international business. Not offshoring, but nearshoring. Companies in big economies like the US and Western Europe want to simplify their supply chains and bring some manufacturing and support functions closer to home. They still want access to lower cost markets, but they don't want the risk of a complex supply chain in too many countries. Look at a map of the world and you'll see that this should benefit two regions the most, Eastern Europe and Mexico. Let's start in Europe, where nearshoring is more advanced. Large international companies in the relatively higher cost West are bringing manufacturing and services to the relatively lower cost East. Eastern Europe connects Asia and the Middle East to Western Europe. The time zone is right, English is commonly spoken, and there are cultural similarities between the East and the West. Many Eastern and Central European countries are already part of the European Union, meaning the legal framework for trade is already in place. And the countries of Eastern Europe generally have stable governments and well-established property rights and rule of law. The region has good multimodal transportation infrastructure. That means ports, railways, and roads, which all connect with one another. Trucks and trains cross borders with little disruption. So Eastern Europe is poised to take advantage of the nearshoring trend. How are they doing? Poland is positioning itself as the gateway between West and East. Romania is carving out a niche in semiconductor manufacturing. Croatia and Slovenia have major ports for importing products. Eastern Europe is also becoming a hub for services. The Czech Republic, Bulgaria, and Turkey have a lot of talent in IT services and software development. Many investment banks and consulting firms are hiring in Poland. Western Europe then already has a well-developed region with lower costs right on its doorstep. There are some challenges. The threat from the east looms large. Russia's thirst for conquering territory by force appears only to be growing stronger. It has already called Poland a dangerous enemy. Things are different in North America. The U.S., the biggest economy in the Americas, shares a 3,000-kilometer border with a lower-cost, friendly country, Mexico. Last year, Mexico became America's largest trading partner, ahead of both China and Canada. The biggest American port is in Laredo, Texas, which has 4 large bridges across the Rio Grande. Mexico has a well-developed manufacturing sector, especially in the automotive industry. Japanese, American, and European car companies have all increased their investment in assembly plants in Mexico. Tesla plans to open a huge factory near Monterrey in the north. Mexico also has the advanced facilities needed for pharmaceutical and medical device manufacturing. The country has a relatively well-developed infrastructure of roads and warehouses. Compared with other countries in Latin America, it has stable electricity and a deep labor market. But there are some challenges. First, shipping is not as well integrated as it is in Europe. Trucks from Mexico have to cross bridges to get to the U.S., and they face long lines for inspections. Trucks from each side have to unload their goods in a narrow border zone, transferring the load to local trucks. That adds costs and delays. Mexico's government is not as committed to nearshoring as are those of Eastern Europe. The rule of law is not as strong. Companies have to worry about safety of their employees, and they have to contend with corruption at all levels of government. Only about a quarter of young people in Mexico pursue higher education. There isn't a culture of apprenticeships like in Europe. or of vocational or technical schools like in the US. The result is that companies often struggle to find enough skilled labor. And then there are the toxic politics of drug smuggling and migration. Still, the advantages outweigh the challenges. Both Mexico and Eastern Europe are enjoying the fruits of nearshoring. Construction of warehouses and data centers is strong in both regions. Rents are up, unemployment is low, the Mexican peso is strong. If politics don't get in the way, this trend could be a real benefit for both regions for a long time to come. For a while, from what I could tell, the attitude in Mexico was skepticism. People were just not sure if this was real or not. The word nearshoring is extremely popular in business, but some people worry only in the type of business that's already present, like auto manufacturing. Tesla announced its huge factory, but then dragged its feet for the better part of a year. They still haven't broken ground, now a year since the announcement. Plus, there's a drought in Mexico now that makes it hard to build and run factories. But the benefits, I think, are starting to show up in the statistics. Trade with the US is up, rents are up, more industrial parks are being built. We'll see how real it turns out to be, but for now, it seems like a great opportunity. Carve out. This is a phrasal verb that means to make some space for yourself or for something. It comes from the word carve, and carve means to cut something up with a knife. So if you roast a turkey, you carve it after it comes out of the oven. You can carve a block of wood with a knife to make a wooden sculpture. But carve out is used metaphorically, and it means to make space. A great way to use this is with time, especially in a business setting. Let's carve out some time to talk about the new project. That means let's make some time. Let's make the space out of our schedules. We're not going to use a knife, but we are going to take our schedules and separate some time. I'm too busy answering emails. I can't carve out any time for long-term planning. I can't carve out any time means I can't make any time. I can't find it. My schedule is too busy. You can carve out a role for yourself. In a lot of jobs, there's a job description. You do what's written in the job description. But in other jobs, it's more flexible. In some jobs, you can decide exactly how you make an impact. Now, if you have a job like that, you can say that you're carving out a role for yourself. You decide how you get to make an impact. You decide your place. This happens in sports too. Not every player is a superstar. Not everyone has the same skills. A player that's good at one specific thing might carve out a role for himself on the team. That means he might find some space for himself, find a role for himself. The key is he makes the space. He makes the role based on his skills. A basketball player might be really good at making 3-point baskets. That's not something a team needs during the whole game. But a player can carve out a role for himself and be the guy they put in the game when they need some 3-point scoring. In this case, it's about the player making space for himself on the team. Hey, I have these skills. You need them sometimes. Let me be the one to fill this space on the team. That's carving out a role. A business can carve out a market. When a business carves out a market, the business is usually making or taking some small part of the market for itself. Here's an example. Snack bars are popular, but the biggest brands are full of artificial ingredients, and they're not very healthy. So a company called Kind decided to carve out a market in healthier, tastier snack bars. This is perfect. The company said, there's demand for healthy food, there's demand for snack bars, we are going to make some space for yourself. And that means a company can say, here is one small, specialized part of the market, and we are going to be the experts in that. Have you ever wanted to eat a QR code? Probably not. But as you learned in lesson 610, there are edible QR code labels. They go on the rounds of Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. And since they are a food product, anything that goes on them must be edible. And so this company carved out a niche for itself, making those edible QR code labels. Countries and regions can carve out space or a role for themselves too. Turkey has carved out a role as an intermediary between Russia and the West. After Russia invaded Ukraine, few countries wanted to talk to Russia directly, but Turkey carved out a role for itself as an intermediary between Russia and other countries. Romania has carved out a niche for itself in semiconductor manufacturing. Europe has traditionally bought semiconductors from the US or China, but recently Romania has carved out a niche for itself, making semiconductors in Eastern Europe. The country invested in the industry, and now it has this specialty. And that is all for us here at Plain English. We have carved out a niche for ourselves here as the best place for you to upgrade your English if you like to follow current events. And many of you listen to the audios in the car as you do errands at home. But if you haven't yet been to the website, I'm telling you, you're missing out. Check out plainenglish.com to join, unlock some great content. There are 3 membership levels, and one of them is absolutely free. So check that out at plainenglish.com. We'll be back on Thursday with a new episode right on schedule. See you then.